So things really hit the fan with the Click last night. There were some interesting lore developments during their recent performance of their Clancy tour that kind of sent the timeline into a spiral. I saw a bunch of people freaking out about it, but when I really truly thought about what this meant, I think it makes a lot of sense for the storyline, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it, so it's my duty to get on here and yap about it. So what exactly happened last night? Well, we have another piece of evidence to suggest that Clancy is becoming a bishop. I've made several videos about this in the past, but I really want to get into it again because there are some things that I've picked up on and I haven't talked about that I want to share. So what is the evidence exactly? Well, we have this shirt, which to the normal person seems like nothing, but these shirts are very important on the Clancy tour. See, Tyler wears a different shirt every night to communicate something about the lore. Basically, he wears a shirt every night with some cryptic message on it and leaves it up to us to decode it. But one of the things that we picked up on is that these shirts are starting to represent the bishops. See, randomly, these t-shirts started popping up with specific patterns that we have seen before, mainly on the Blurry Face album cover. As we know, the Blurry Face album cover represents a lot with 21 Pilots. Each of these patterns represent a song, and those songs represent bishops. This is where they got their name. So by Tyler using these patterns on the t-shirt, we can infer that these are representing bishops. Also, shout out to Keons on Twitter for keeping us updated with the shirts. I appreciate you greatly. So as to be expected, these t-shirts started popping up nightly, each one displaying a different pattern that represented a different bishop. But something interesting happened when we ran out of bishop patterns, and that was last night, and this was the shirt we got. Tyler ended the bishop shirt cycle with Clancy. Each number represents a letter in the alphabet. So for example, that 3 at the start is A, B, C, so C. And so the shirt spells out his name. Now there is no pattern to go along with Clancy, but it is interesting that they ended the bishop shirts with Clancy, maybe signifying that Clancy is the last bishop. Now I think Tyler ending the bishop shirts with Clancy is literally telling us what's going to happen. The bishops are going to end with Clancy. Now from the Clancy era, we know that Clancy is trying to defeat Dima from the inside out, sparking the rebellion within its walls, training the Dima citizens right in Dima, and also him taking on the black and red colors. There's this huge idea of defeating Dima from the inside out, and what better way to do that than become a bishop? There was also loads of evidence that Clancy might become a bishop in the FPE event, with the letter message saying if we become them, we must do better, and the picture of the bishop cloak. And plus, Clancy literally means son of Red Warrior. I'm just saying. The evidence is stacking up that Clancy will become a bishop, and I see people online saying that it's not going to happen. I think at this point we have loads of evidence to suggest that that is going to happen, but what does that mean for the storyline? I see a lot of people saying that this would be a horrible way to end the story, because if this story parallels mental health, why in the world would you have our main character, the one that represents hope, succumb to these dark forces? And I don't think it's that at all. I think it has more to do with acceptance and ending the cycle. In the I Am Clancy video, Clancy talks about how he's stuck in a cycle, and I think that part of it is what he's actually doing, because ever since Trench, Clancy has been running from this darker side of him. He's been running from Dima and the bishops, constantly fighting them. If you think about what that means in terms of mental health, this is someone who is constantly running away from their problems, trying to deny that they exist, just trying to get away from it all. And that's not a realistic way to deal with your problems, because even if you run away from it, it's still there. And much like Dima and the bishops, it's eventually going to catch up with you. And if you're constantly running from these problems and running from the darker sides of yourself, you are going to be stuck in a cycle because you're never addressing the problem. But I also want to talk about the huge theme of duality in 21 Pilots. We see this since Blurry Face, this huge theme of Tyler being two halves. There's two faces, two parts of him. Tyler is Clancy, but he's also Blurry Face. There's a good side of him and there's a bad side of him. And the way that he depicts the story is very much like they're two separate people. They're literally two separate people. But living as if there's two different versions of yourself is not a way to live, because that's not how people are. People aren't constantly good and they're not constantly bad. That's just not how the world works. There's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. Everyone's going to be happy at some point and everyone's going to be sad at some point. So every person is both of these halves combined. You can't live in a split world. You can't live with these two halves of yourself. You have to balance them and accept that it is a balance. There's things that everyone doesn't like about themselves. There's things that people are insecure about. There's really dark parts of themselves. But if we really want to confront and fix those problems, we have to accept that we have those problems. We have to accept that in a way, those are part of us. Because the first step to recovery is acceptance. So I think up until this point, Clancy is very much denying that part of him, very much trying to run away from those darker parts of him. So by becoming a bishop, Clancy is accepting those darker parts of himself. He is merging those two halves together and becoming one person. And by fully accepting the dark and good parts of him, he can finally address the problem, which is Dima. Clancy has stopped running from the issue. As we can see in the Paladin Straight video, he's directly confronting them. He's directly confronting his problems. He's shaking hands with the dark parts of his thoughts. So I don't think Clancy becoming a bishop is saying that Clancy is defeated in any way. I think this is him recognizing that there is a problem and recognizing that he has to face this head on. And by doing so, you have to accept that it's there, that those parts of you exist, and then that is when we can finally address the problem. So essentially, I see Clancy becoming a bishop temporarily and then defeating Dima and then going back to normal. I don't think that this is going to be something that stays with him. As I said before, if this is two halves coming together, I think it is finally recognizing that balance and that things aren't always going to be good and things aren't always going to be bad, much like in mental health. Because mental health is so complicated and there's never really an ending point, I think this idea of acceptance is a good way to end it, a good way to go about it. Tyler finally becoming one person with himself. There is no blurry face, there is no Clancy, it's just Tyler, this person who is a balance of good and bad. But those were just my thoughts on it. Maybe it'll calm some of your fears, I'm not sure. This is just what I think. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to join the Groovy Graveyard. Shout out to my patron, Coastedin. You can check out my Patreon in the link below, and I will see you in the next one.